Hey everyone, I'm Nala. In this video, I'm going to be discussing how race, ethnicity, and class have an effect on people's experiences with law enforcement and their perception. I'll also break down how those experiences shift depending on whether the policing is public or private. Everything I'm discussing comes from chapter 8 and 9 of our textbook, which gave some pretty eye-opening examples that really stuck with me. First, let's talk about race and ethnicity. It's not a secret that communities of color, especially African American and Latinx people, have historically faced more aggressive and invasive policing. This continues to happen today in reference to 2020 George Floyd. In chapter 8, there's a story of Israel, a successful undocumented business owner in Florida. He got pulled over by Border Control, basically just for driving a white van and speaking Spanish. Even though he had a valid license, the agent demanded a Mexican ID, escalated the situation, cuffed him, and slammed his arm into the van. Hard enough to make him bleed. Israel had been filming the whole thing on his phone, and when the agent realized that, he got defensive and angry, even though Israel had done nothing wrong. This particular incident shows how racial profiling and assumptions guide law enforcement behavior. Just being Latinx and existing in public space, driving, working, living, can make you a target. And this isn't just about one bad officer. It's about a system where race influences who gets stopped, how they're treated, and what options they have afterward. Now, if we add class to the picture, things get even more complicated. In that same chapter, there's a woman named Alma who was stopped by policing or who was stopped by police on her way to take her autistic son to a specialist. She didn't have a driver's license, so her car was impounded. The cop could have made it worse, but even that small action had a huge ripple effect. After that, Alma stopped traveling for her son's care. She quit going to English classes. Her husband started staying on the ranch where he works instead of commuting, just to avoid the police. All of this just to avoid anything that can separate their family. This shows how low-income, undocumented families live in constant fear. A traffic stop isn't just a hassle, it's a risk to their entire life structure. They're forced to make impossible trade-offs between staying safe and getting their basic needs met. That's what class-based policing looks like in real life. Now, let's get into public versus private policing, which chapter 9 covers in depth. Public police are funded by the state and are supposed to serve everyone, but we've seen how that plays out unequally constantly. In contrast, private security is usually hired by businesses or wealthy communities, and they're there to protect property and clients, not just the general public. But the thing is, private security agents aren't bound by the same legal protections that apply to public officers. Scholars like Marks and Skansky point out that private agents don't have to follow rules like Miranda warnings or limit on searches. There's no constitutional protection against unreasonable search and seizure from private actors unless they're deputized. That means people who may be former cops or federal agents now working for private firms can still access sensitive information and use advanced surveillance, but with very little oversight. On the flip side, some private agents are totally untrained or unprofessional, and their actions can be abusive and even dangerous. The public sees this and it damages trust. not just in private policing, but in law enforcement as a whole. The textbook also points out how off-duty public police often moonlight for private clients, blurring the lines even further. Sometimes they're even using city patrol cars. At that point, who are they even working for? The public or whoever's paying them? It's easy to see how wealthier most white communities get a version of policing that's responsive and protective, while working class, often undocumented communities are met with policing that's intimidating and controlling, whether it's public or private. Overall, race and class have a massive influence on how people experience and view law enforcement. And the split between public and private policing adds a whole nother layer of inequality, especially when private agents can operate in legal gray areas with little accountability. So I actually gathered two questions regarding chapter 8 and 9. Um, my first question is if private policing is going to keep growing, and if so many agents are ex-law enforcement with advanced skills, should there be stricter laws or standards about what they can do and how they're held accountable? I ask that because the lines are so great and blurred. It's just, it gets to a point where people are in danger and something needs to be done about it. So then that leads to my following question. What happens to justice when security becomes something you can buy? What now? Thank you everyone for watching, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you all think.